Is it time?
I
think so. Yeah? Yeah. 12 o'clock? Yeah. Just a quick introduction. Robbie Swan, long-time advocate for free speech and civil liberties, and is co-founder of the Australian Sex Party. Robbie spoke last in Nimbin, the 2023 50th anniversary of the Aquarius Festival on Aquarius 73 consciousness raising, then and now. Fiona Patten is a pioneering activist and former politician. As co-founder of the Australian Sex Party, she served nearly a decade in the Victorian Parliament, driving progressive reforms across equality, health and civil liberties. Robbie Swan's forthcoming memoir, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Sex Party, draws on his 25 years as a magazine editor and parliamentary lobbyist for the adult industry. Spanning half a century and bookended by the creation of the Australian Sex Party with his partner, trailblazing MP Fiona Patten, Robbie's stories chart how a life spent challenging taboos and fighting hypocrisy ultimately helped reshape public debate and law reform. But we're also joined by David Halpern, former barrister and drug law reform advocate.
Yeah. No,
what's this?
Is this the...
Stephen Lawrence?
We're the wrong one.
We're the wrong one.
Are you?
I think we're on the 12:30 one.
Are you in the cup? Are you in the cup? This is in the cup.
Is this indica how to grow your own weed?
That's at 12:30.
No, that was before.
That was at 11.
11 o'clock.
Or the drug drive. I didn't know you did that.
We love you so much.
Thanks, David. No, please have a seat. You can share with us. It's the book.
I'm sorry.
Do you have growing tips we didn't know about?
You check your diary.
David, it's on at 12:30 here, mate.
12:30.
Yes, mate. But you'll be much the better for having experiences.
Oh, I'm all in.
Once you
Actually, I will say from the outset, for a book launch, one of the pathetic things we forgot to do is get some books. So there will be no buying of said book today. I know, look, we've signed it for each other.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. No, welcome everyone. No, it actually we just got some forward copies from the printer just the other day, so we've just got a couple. But what we're going to talk about is Robbie's memoir. Well, I guess it's both of our memoirs, really.
Yeah.
We've been boyfriend and girlfriend for 35 years. And this book, the first one we did was Sex, Drugs and the Electoral Roll, and this one is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Sex Party. Now, Robbie describes this. He says the plot, and I think the reason we're talking about it here at MardiGrass is we saw so many similarities in campaigns against the sex industry, against sex work, and the prohibition and the arguments that the people used are very similar to the ones they're using against drug law reform and against cannabis. So in this book, Robbie writes that the plot is simple but engaging against a backdrop of 2.5 million years of hot-wired Homo sapien instinct, a small ideological elite, organised religion, aligns itself with a small political elite, the socially conservative politicians, to try and rewrite large parts of human evolutionary behaviour, namely sex and desire. Now, I think you could say exactly the same thing for drugs. Not only do they try and rewrite history, but they also try to change the behaviour itself, using the state's resources and its judicial functions to enforce their views. Again, insert cannabis or any other drugs in there. And they need a scapegoat, so they set about marginalising a group of people who promote and enjoy the evolutionary behaviour, the sex industry and its customers. Lives are shattered and people are jailed. So very similar to the campaigns that you have all been part of in drug law reform. We saw it with sex and sex work. Now, Robbie, you had some very interesting conversations, and I know right at the front of the book is Meeting Bronwyn Bishop. Does anyone in this room remember Bronwyn Bishop?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty memorable. Also, she was known for her love of Louis Vuitton stilettos. It was rumored that she didn't take them off because her feet were so badly cramped by them that if she took them off, she'd never be able to get them back on again. So she slept in them. She had a penchant for fur coats and very large army sergeants standing. She liked to be flanked by fur and bears, yeah, furry bears, ferret bears.
Is she the one that liked helicopter rides?
She's the one that liked helicopter rides.
Yeah.
But she also met Robbie. Now, Robbie? Why were you even daring to speak to the good Senator Bronwyn Bishop? She was really above your rank.
Yeah, she was. I mean, look, as Fiona was saying, this book is a selection of short stories of moments that happened in our lobbying campaigns around sex and censorship from about 1988 through until about 2000. But a couple of the stories go back to the 40s as well. And so, really it's a book about the prohibition on pleasure, which again is, like this what we're about here as well. But Bronwyn Bishop, I went to negotiate a deal with the anti-nuclear senator Irina Dunn back in 1988, and I walked into her office and sort of had a chat, and she said to me, "Oh, by the way, have you ever met Bronwyn Bishop?" And I said, No. And she said, "Well, buckle up." and before I could do anything, in comes Bronwyn Bishop with about 4 or 5 young dudes in blue suits with red ties, all marching behind her. And she walked into the room as if to go to see Irina, and Irina said to her, "Oh, by the way, and Senator, this is Robbie Swan. He works for a lobbyist for the X-rated video companies." And without blinking, she just walked straight up to me, and from that far away, just with a death stare, and said, "So, do you star?" I have never ever been asked that question before. I didn't know what to say, and I was kind of fumbling, and then she just walked off as if she'd spoken to the furniture. I went over and talked to Irina for a few minutes, and then walked straight out with all these dudes behind her, and I kept thinking, well, yeah. Anyway, as she got to the door, she stopped and spun around on her heel and looked back at me and raised one eyebrow as if to say, "Well?" and then walked off. So I thought,
What's the answer? What's the answer?
No! Not just a little guy in the background. But it was just an example of the way in which politicians do come across to lobbyists from, this industry here, the hemp industry, the cannabis industry and others, and you can never pick it, you just never pick it. So,
look, I think one of the, we used to always turn up to, whenever we visit politicians with a brown paper bag. You would never walk into a politician's office without a brown paper bag. It didn't have cash in it always. We'll get to that in a second. But we always used to take X-rated films in, non-violent erotic films. And I reckon not even, I think maybe once someone said no. Once. And it was it was anyway, one person ever said no. Some people asked for more. Rob Hunt, the Attorney General, was a great fan. He always got a 6-pack. Who?
Which Attorney General?
Rob Hulls. Oh, he'll admit he doesn't mind me saying this. He's but it was, I think, one of the worst ones was not Mal Cosson, the guy who was the Aboriginal Affairs Minister. Anyway, the Aboriginal, what? Yes, Bruck, that's right. Mel Bruck. He loved it, and we actually got him Debbie Does Dallas #7 in 3D. He was delighted by that. But what we were in there talking to him about was the ban on X-rated films in Aboriginal communities. So this was a time when they were banning porn and alcohol in Aboriginal communities in some misguided approach to stop ending violence in those communities. Anyway, we wanted the postcodes because our members ran all of the big mail order companies, and we needed the postcodes of where we weren't allowed to sell. Now, Mal Brough hadn't even thought of that, of course, and really it raised a whole bunch of questions, but he still happily took the porn, and as he's walking out of his office after meeting us and he's walking us out, one of his advisors said, Minister, probably best you're not carrying the porn as you walk out of the office. The porn that you have just banned in Aboriginal communities. And he was like, oh yes, put that back on the desk. But, so I think we heard from David Edershank and Rachel and Jeremy yesterday about some of the ugly, you have to eat shit sandwiches sometimes in politics. Sometimes you have to make, and I think Brian was also saying, you have to compromise. But probably, I think one of the shittiest ones was dealing with Mal Colston. Does anyone remember Mal Colston? Yeah, he was a big man. Yeah.
Mal Colston he found himself in a position where he had balance of power over the banning of phone sex in Australia. This is back in the late 90s. Then at that stage, there were thousands of women in the country were earning big money from talking dirty on the phone while they did the ironing. And it was a huge business, absolutely huge. And AdultShop.com, a company in Western Australia, floated on the stock exchange on the basis of the amount of money that they were earning from this. And so it was big business. Anyway, Mal Colston finds himself in this position. And we, of course, lobbied him to run with, to not agree to ban phone sex. But as it turned out, in the Senate at that time, Senator Harradine had lobbied John Howard to say, I'm not going to vote for the sale of Telstra, or the first tranche of Telstra, unless you give me a ban on phone sex. I mean, that's how they carry on, it's very transactional in that way. And so we lobbied Mal Colston like crazy, and in the beginning days, nothing happened. He was not going to move. And then one day, we get a call in the Eros office from Mal Colston saying, or from his advisor, saying that basically for $30,000, he'll vote with us. He'll vote our way. Now,
he's dead now, so we can talk about
this. Yes. We never would have said it before. But and that's the beauty of the book, is that there's a lot of things we can say now that you couldn't say before. So he's demanding $30,000 as a bribe for us, to... And of course we thought, going down that rabbit hole, there's a lot of ferrets down there. So we didn't want to do that, so we had to say no in the end. But
no, we said yes. We said yes.
Craig Ellis? Okay.
We said yes. In the end, the fucking Democrats didn't turn up for the vote.
That's right.
So the vote was a tie. The Democrats came in and said, because they'd actually rushed the vote, so they'd flipped the order of the votes in the Senate, so they'd flipped the votes, and so the Democrats didn't get down in time to do the vote. So Mal Colston kept his word. He did vote against the ban, but we didn't have the Democrats in the House, so that it was lost. The Democrats were upset. I mean, we didn't give them any money, but they were very upset. So they went down and did a motion to try and redo the vote. But of course, and Mal Colston, to his credit, actually voted to redo the vote, but they didn't get the numbers to redo the vote. But I don't know that we ever paid him.
No, there was no money to change hands in the end, but that's the best way to leave that.
His son, who the money was for his no good son, He wanted to set him up for, you know,
Yeah. His son's still
year
alive, so
supply of
I won't
ice
go there.
cream.
But those kind of that story is quite an interesting story to see how lobbyists from you know, a small, you know, kind of group can go in there and suddenly you're caught in this bind. Do you go and find $30,000 with the senator because he's going to pass you a bill? But not all of the stuff that we did in those days and that's in the book here was like that. I mean, we did some you know, guerrilla campaigns which were hilarious at times. And
ASIO?
yeah.
Tell us about ASIO.
This was before I met Fiona, and she always maintained afterwards that it was a really dumb thing to do, and that she was probably punished. But in the late 1980s, you know, John Lark was making a very large number of X-rated films in Australia under the Down Under series, and we thought we'd add a film to this, or do a storyboard anyway, that involved ASIO and the High Court and the Federal Police. And so, you know, like I know it was absolutely stupid, but we did it. So this involved making a hardcore film with all these agencies in the background and the uniforms and all that. So I remember, you know, I had a former policewoman who had a uniform still, Christina Jaeger, she's still around I think, and a guy called Mel Bourne, who was a porn star, big, lazy, laconic kind of guy, very good actor though, and so we put them together. He was dressed up as an ASIO agent, black suit, white shirt, black tie, and she put on her old police uniform. And so we walked up to the front of the ASIO building in Russell offices in Canberra, and pressed the button and said, oh look, my name's, I don't know what it was, you know, some name, and I'm here to do a small feature that's commissioned by the Attorney General's Department to bring about better relationships between the different enforcement agencies. And, you know, and so I waited there for a few seconds and nothing happened, and I thought, oh dear, you know, there's a camera right on me. So I'm about to turn around and suddenly this door goes, shh, and a voice says, come in. And there was no one there, so I walked in, and the next thing he says, turn right and go into that room. And there's another door in there with a padded room, and the door goes shh behind me.
Soundproof room, not
Soundproof, yeah. So I walked in there and I thought, I'm going to get done here for sure. Anyway, after a few seconds, you know, the guy comes out and he quizzes me about what I want and just looks straight through me. And then, you know, like a budgie when it cocks its head to look at the seed, you know, he sort of looks at me like that and says, you've got 2 minutes, not a second longer, and you get out of here. So I went outside, grabbed the actors, you know, and they very quickly did a quick undress, hands roaming all over breasts, fingers up there, on the front steps of ASIO. And then we flew down the stairs into the car, straight over to the High Court, and they had sex in the bushes underneath the High Court. And all of this was sort of put together in a, you know, in a little thing, and it was published by Australian Hustler magazine. It was meant to be a storyboard for a really good X-rated film, but of course, I don't know, it never came off. But we never received a visit from ASIO, which was extraordinary.
They were watching, my darling. They were watching. And on that, there was a fellow called Dennis Stevenson, and he was a South African copper, and you know, hated drugs. I think he particularly liked sex, but he didn't want anyone to know. Deeply religious man. Obviously not getting along with the family well. It seemed he was living at the Parliament. So he was a member of Parliament in the Legislative Assembly in Canberra, and he would get milk delivered in the morning outside the Legislative Assembly. And you would see him come out at 7 a.m. in the morning and pick up his milk. So the Canberra Times camped out and captured him. So he was living on the couch in his office, very anti-porn. In fact, he was anti-self-government, which was interesting because he never tried to get rid of the self-government. He got elected on a no self-government ticket and ran for election the second time as well on a no self-government ticket. But anyway, he was the major opponent to X-rated videos in the ACT, and by that time it was you could only sell X-rated videos in the ACT. Unlike cannabis, when they banned the sale of X-rated films, they didn't ban the possession of them. So it was legal to buy them, but illegal to sell them. It was illegal to make them, but legal to have sex, fortunately. And in the ACT, you could have sex for money unless there was a camera in the room. So it was quite fine. So there was some of the brothels got round that by putting the camera in another room. And just a hole through the wall. I don't think that actually did get around the legislation, but, they let couples go and film themselves there. But Dennis Stevenson, I think he was holding a big rally, and you disrupted it.
Yeah, this was another one of these sort of stupid guerrilla attacks that we did on her opponents in those days. I don't know how it transcribes into a cannabis thing, but it may be. But they hired the Albert Hall in Canberra, which is this beautiful old grand building there, and they're doing an anti-porn rally, and so all the people start flooding in on this Sunday morning. Probably, I don't know, 400 or 500 people. Strong Christians and moralists all going in there. Dennis Stevenson starts to work the crowd, and before that, my mate and I have gone out to Fishwick to the adult shop and bought the latest blow-up doll, which is a Kylie doll, and this is late 80s, and a bottle of helium. And so we wait in the bushes outside at the Albert Hall, and as Dennis starts to wind the crowd up with, the wages of sin, we affix the hose to Kylie's anus and blow her up, and she's like so we then cupped her, and as he gets going, because the doors are all open at this stage, it's a very hot summer's day, and we pushed her, and like a stealth bomber, she glides in, and at that point we ran. We grabbed our gas bottles and just ran as fast as we could to the getaway car. And so we don't actually know what happened after the but I'm pretty sure that Kylie floated to the top of the 10-metre high ceiling in the Albert Hall, and you know how they've got those big and she would have stuck on the top of the ceiling while they had their meeting. And it was all designed to make it, so the full experience. Anyway, nothing in the papers the next day. They never said anything about it. I think they just copped it, And the next morning, the Department of Capital Territory shot her with a BB gun, and bring her down. Anyway, these little stories are written up in the book in a much more detailed way.
Yeah, and then we nearly got jailed for contempt of Parliament for saying that if they were going to ban X-rated videos at a federal level, and that meant that the possession of X-rated videos would become illegal as well. And we said, look, if you're going to do that, we will go through the mailing lists that we have and the extensive mailing lists that we have of X-rated video subscribers, and we will out every member of Parliament who's on them. Anyway, that didn't go down well. And we got charged with contempt of Parliament for that.
Well, there was also the fact that at the same time, the coalition were having a vote, joint party room debate about whether to ban X-rated videos again at the next meeting they're having. And of course, the night before it, we get a phone call from the Fantasyland adult shop in Fishwick saying, oh God, you're not going to believe who's in here buying X-rated films. And it was a very prominent National Party person with his wife. We won't name names here, but I think you can probably all guess who it was.
It was called Black Stallion, wasn't it? The Stallion?
He might have. Yeah, it was Lee Sinclair and his wife, right?
Yeah.
But, and so we've said to the shopper, wow, you're joking. Are they on security camera? He said, oh, yeah. I said, did you find out what videos they bought? He said, oh, yeah. That one I won't tell you because, they were amazing. And so anyway, the next morning we did an interview on radio, and the radio announcer on ABC, Matt Abraham, who was a very strong Christian but refused to acknowledge that when he was interviewing people about, matters of vice, he sort of basically said, you don't have that information, I said, yeah, we do. And he said, well, what are we going to do with it? I said, well, I don't know, we might release it if if this National Party person votes to ban X-rated videos, the day after he's gone and bought a swag. And his constituents have got a right to know that. And so anyway, of course, the media just went off about it, and it was, we were accused of all sorts of horrible things, for blackmailing politicians like that. But at the end of the day, I still believe that we did the right thing.
But what was even hilarious was 2 other politicians put their hand up and said it was them.
Yeah, that's right.
No, thanks, Russell, but no, it wasn't you. So Russell Broadbent put his hand up and said he'd gone into an adult store for research purposes only, of course. And a New South Wales MP had said, put his hand up and said yes. And I think he'd gone to a Northern Territory.
That's right.
And I think he even named the one he'd got. Like it was some gay one on Fireman.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, but we're fast running out of time.
Yeah.
We did get to the sex party, and when we got to the sex party, 80% of Australians did not believe that sexually explicit, non-violent erotic films should be illegal. The same as 80% of Australians do not think that cannabis should be a crime. And just quickly, when we set up the name for the sex party, actually Ray was part of that discussion, but we decided on the sex party because we thought it would shine out on the ballot. I don't know, a little bit like a cannabis leaf shines out on a ballot, but we thought the word sex is going to shine out. So you put it up for the Electoral Commission. We got so many complaints.
One of them was they thought that having that on the ballot paper would create orgiastic notions in the minds of the voters, and that they'd start beating off in the polling booth and stuff like that. It was just absolutely insane. The protestation.
And our logo was where you come first.
And lo and behold, where our scrutiny is at the polling booth did find was that a lot of people did put an erect penis but drawn in the box, in the sex party box, instead of the ticker across. But the Electoral Commission allowed it as a proper vote because it was obvious as to what they meant. Putting the dick in the box.
Putting the dick in your box. Put a dick in our box. Anyway, the book will be out in good bookstores very soon, in the next couple of months. We have run out of time, but does anyone have a burning question for Robbie? Not. Well, thank you all for coming. We do like you to come first, But as I say, there is so many analogies and so many links between the campaigns for sex reform and the campaigns for cannabis reform. Yes, Miles.
Can I just ask a question? What do you think is the most important lesson from all your work that you've done for the sex party for the cannabis legalisation? Your successes and your experience?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, apart from using cannabis throughout those early sex party campaigns, I think cannabis made us, quite creative in some of those things. So I think there's an effect at that level. But at a different level, I guess maybe it's just, the things like, the prohibition on pleasure. That it's interesting that, the prohibition on sex and drugs is pretty similar. It comes from the same place. It's from the same people. So there's a lesson in that, I think, for lobbying of cannabis. But I think also that, I'm not sure whether those guerrilla campaigns work for cannabis or not, because I think people sort of expect that a bit, So maybe it's not the way to go. I think, as Ethan Nadelman was saying yesterday, we probably need more suits and ties in the cannabis lobbying campaign, rather than that sort of alternative approach. But
I think also, quite often we would have to take a compromise. So, we wouldn't it wouldn't be banned, but there'd be this restrictions. Or when they were trying to ban the internet, I don't know if people remember, they literally decided they were going to ban. No, Minister Alston decided he was going to ban the internet. Anyway, during that time, we then convinced them that as long as an adult website was not in Australia, because they thought it would be physically in Australia, if it was on an internet server somewhere else, then it was okay, because it wasn't in Australia, and they could still maintain their ban in Australia. Not that so everybody set their server. So it's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, well, we're going to soon have a panel here discussing drug law reform.